This weak virgin boy finds himself transported to a completely different world where he is forced to battle monsters and goblins just to survive each day. Haruka is always alone, just as he was back in his real world, where he was a total lonely loser and virgin with no riz and a future as dark as my black hole. Nobody ever noticed him because he never fit in with any of the school cliques, which were divided into groups like Andrew Tate followers, the school hoes, disgusting delinquents, smelly and sweaty nerds, the Sigmas, and the good girls with level 100 GYAT. Resting his head on the desk, Haruka knows there's no place for someone like him in this world, when suddenly his classmates start acting like fools as they watch a glowing golden circle appear in the classroom. Being a virgin weeb like many of them, Haruka instantly recognizes this as an isekai summoning, just like in the mangas he's read, but he's too lazy to deal with it. He tries to walk away, only to find the door sealed tightly with Flex Seal. Even with a lot of damage, it won't budge. The magic circle expands, engulfing the classroom as students begin getting sucked in. Having watched too many Tom Cruise movies, Haruka tries to escape through the air ducts, but his luck runs out as the circle catches him and drags him into a white, endless void. He glances around, wondering where on earth his entire class is, and waits for an ugly ass king with a level 10,000 GYAT daughter to greet him. Nothing happens. Soon he notices an old-ass man running toward him, attempting to communicate in sign language for some reason. Somehow, Haruka manages to understand that all of his classmates were summoned earlier, transported to a different world after selecting a special ability. The old man informs him that he also needs to pick a skill, but out of the 50 options, 43 have already been taken, leaving no overpowered skills left. Realizing he'll have to settle for a lame-ass skill to survive in this new world, his hopes are dashed further when he sees that even your mom has better abilities than the remaining ones. Frustrated, he shakes the old man like a maraca, demanding he get better skills or learn to count properly, and to stop summoning people if he doesn't have enough abilities. The old man finally snaps, shoving him aside and saying that someone as unlucky as him wouldn't survive even with the best skills. In frustration, he gives Haruka all the leftover abilities and pushes him into the new world. When Haruka turns around, he's stunned to find himself in the middle of a vast forest. Scared and alone, he spots a pouch on the ground and picks it up, discovering it has unlimited carrying capacity. It's a decent item, but unfortunately, everything inside is as basic as my girlfriend. He quickly performs a drip check and tries to review his stats, but out of nowhere, 2 dice appear on the screen. He rolls them and both land on M. He has no clue what it stands for, but the stats prompt him to assign everything to a single skill. Unsure if M means minus or something else, he plays it safe and bets everything on the luck stat. To his shock, M actually stands for maximum, and his luck stat is now maxed out. He also learns that due to his extreme loneliness and being a virgin, God has granted him a special pity ability that lets him tame wild creatures. He looks around to see if any of its classmates are nearby, but no one's around, so he decides to move forward and build his own house inspired by the dudes on YouTube who build homes out of dirt. As he walks through the forest, he begins to feel uneasy, worried that a giant monster might jump out at him, or maybe it's your mom. To ease his fears, he pulls out another skill item called contact lenses. To his amazement, as soon as he puts them on, he gains the power to see the stats of different things, an incredibly useful and powerful ability. He realizes that these skills are far more valuable than their names suggest and continues on, happily scanning his surroundings for herbs that boost health, antivenom mushrooms, and more. With his bottomless bag, he's able to gather as much as he wants to sell as medicine for a big profit. After rehydrating like a true Sigma, he presses on through the forest, eventually coming across the entrance to a cave. He prays to God, hoping there are no creatures inside, and then enters to search for anything useful. The cave quickly becomes pitch black, so he pulls out his lantern and magic tent, which he can easily set up to live peacefully. By the time night falls, Haruka feels more comfortable than Bear Grylls as he gathers sticks and, using his temperature magic, ignites a fire that will also keep the beasts away. He checks his stats again, noticing that several of his skills have leveled up, but he's too exhausted to review them, so he drifts off to sleep. The next morning, he wakes with a start and scans the area to ensure he's still safe, realizing his monster-repelling methods work flawlessly. Feeling hungry, he lights another fire, pulls out a pan, and sautés some mushrooms and beef jerky. The meal turns out surprisingly tasty, and he wonders if he could settle here as a buff farmer, but he remembers he has no protein powder. So he heads out of the cave again, discovering a patch of herbs that could help him build muscle. While gathering the herbs, he hears a ruckus behind him and spots a group of foolish goblins scrounging around. Panic sets in and he hides in some bushes as the stupid-ass goblins start singing Skibidi Toilet. That's where Haruka draws the line, grabbing his staff before the nonsense gets to him. He wonders if his stick will be enough to handle the 2 goblins. Just to be cautious, he puts on some gear and then rushes toward them, hitting one of the goblins on its big-ass head. This triggers something inside him, and he starts pounding the poor creature until it's knocked out cold on the ground. The other goblin gets frightened but still charges at Haruka. Luckily for Haruka, the goblin's moves are predictable, so he dodges the attacks easily before smacking it on the head and finishing it off with a small magic blast. Afterward, he washes his face as the sun sets and decides to head home, feeling like he's done enough for the day. Once back at his cave, he roasts some mushrooms like a total hobo and checks his stats, only to see that several abilities have leveled up. This is great news, but he can't help wondering what the goblins would do to him if they found him alone in the empty cave. He quickly shakes off the scary thoughts and warms up with some exercise before heading to bed. The next morning, he wakes up to mushrooms for breakfast again, which is already getting tiresome. He wonders if he can find some meat, but quickly remembers how the vegans in his class would roast him alive if he said that out loud. He gets up, boosts his stats with some magic, and heads out for the day with his trusty wooden staff in hand. Soon, he finds something on the ground, only to discover it's yet another worthless mushroom. Frustrated, he tosses it to the ground and resumes searching for meat as if it grows on trees like a total virgin. Before long, he regains his composure and realizes he should focus on honing his magic abilities. He powers up his stats once more and then starts sprinting through the forest. To his amazement, his speed has multiplied several times, making his body feel incredibly light and agile. Even his attacks appear faster and stronger, so he decides to test this out on a nearby group of goblins. Without hesitation, he leaps into battle, striking the first goblin with his wooden weapon before knocking the second one on the head. This, however, angers the goblins, especially the muscular one, who picks up a club. Haruka, not wanting to risk it, hides in the bushes and slips away unnoticed. He decides he's had enough for the day and heads back to his cave, reflecting on the day's events before starting some DIY projects like putting together an IKEA table. After a few attempts by the next morning, he's gotten pretty skilled and successfully assembles a stool and a coffee table on his own. With his newfound craftsmanship, he tightens security, building a wooden gate at the cave entrance to ensure no one can enter without permission. That night, he heads out to hunt a small bunny, unable to go much longer without meat. Fortune favors him as he spots a rabbit darting through the forest and manages to catch it like a wildcat. Grinning like a predator at the thought of the meal, he suddenly senses the presence of others nearby and shifts into alert mode. He looks around to his surprise and disappointment, sees the group of delinquents walking toward him. This really frightens him because he doesn't want to get mixed up with them, so he hides behind some bushes and quietly walks away. But then his instincts kick in again. He quickly uses his special vision, which allows him to see everything around him, and to his surprise, he notices the thoughts heading his way from one side, while the typical Andrew Tate fans and the smelly nerds approach from the other. He decides he wants nothing to do with any of them, when he suddenly spots the vegan girls led by the class president. He lets the bunny go and considers whether he should meet the class president since she's always been kind to him, and he's known her since first grade. But he stops himself with pure determination, thinking about how great it feels to be in control of his own life, and decides that he will conquer the world on his own terms. Before that, he needs to hide from the bullies, so he dives into the bushes. One of them hears a noise and heads toward it, leaving Haruka hoping the guy won't come any closer. Fortunately, a rabbit suddenly darts out of the underbrush, startling the bully, and they all convince themselves it was just the animal. Although Haruka doesn't want to confront them, he stays nearby to eavesdrop. They aren't saying anything important, just the leader talking about the vice class rep's melons, while the others start naming their own favorites. This reminds Haruka how those girls always handle bullies like these. The leader then annoys Tanaka, an outsider, asking if the girls' skills will help with their plans, making Haruka think they're using him like a Google search. The leader jokes that the vice rep is waiting for him, and soon after, they leave for good. Haruka assumes the whole class is upstream, but he knows solitude is best. His main problem is that he's only gathered mushrooms so far, though his loner skill has leveled up from avoiding interactions. Still, he's only at level 3, probably because he hasn't advanced his Master of None and Ventriloquist skills, which he doesn't even fully understand. Without delay, he tries to figure out these abilities. Master of None likely means he can't focus enough to master any one thing, but he can do a bit of everything at a mediocre level. As for ventriloquism, it seems like a useless talent, as if it means he's just a puppet for others. Regardless, he drops it for now and eats to clear his mind, even if it's just more mushrooms. On the 7th morning, Haruka is jolted awake by the sound of metal clashing and male shouts. He assumes it's the delinquents again, but discovers the nerds battling goblins. Amused, he wonders if he should help, though they don't seem to be winning. Using his evaluation skill, Haruka checks their status and sees they're all level 16, a sorcerer of Sync, Guardian, and Shinobi, far from useless like him. This reminds him of his class, full of talented students, and he still doesn't understand why he was grouped with the Otaku nerds. Just as he's about to leave, his perception skill detects 2 goblins sneaking up on the nerds. Remembering their kindness, Haruka takes out the enemies. He greets them afterward, and soon they're walking together, thanking him for his help. But Haruka, having been isolated for so long, is unsure how to respond to their gratitude. He leads them to his cave, where they're impressed by the structure he built alone. Haruka strikes up a conversation, asking what happened to the rest of the class and why they were in the forest at that hour. The nerds struggle to respond, so the sorcerer explains that it all started when they were teleported into the forest. Some scratched their heads, others pinched themselves thinking it was a dream, while a few cried. The nerds, however, were the most at ease in this new world. The bullies, sensing this, demanded answers about such worlds, threatening violence. Amid the chaos, the class rep tried to calm everyone down. But when a goblin horde appeared, even the toughest delinquents couldn't hold their ground. The nerds, though, stood firm, the guardian with his shield, the shinobi with his katana, the sing with a hammer, and the sorcerer with his magic. Eventually, even the bullies and athletes joined the fight, and the goblins were defeated. After the battle, the class rep suggested they find a safer spot, leading them to a riverbank. The nerds used their skills to establish a survival plan and set up camp, while the class reps assigned tasks like keeping watch, cooking, and gathering supplies. This allowed the class to function as a team until the popular girls refused to gather firewood. Their rebellion spread, and soon only the class reps, the nerds, and a few others remained at the camp. Although some were still unmotivated and bored with the routine, causing them to slack off, a goblin attack hit the base. The nerds, already swamped with work, had to fight off the enemies on their own. They won, but the cost was exhaustion. The nerd sorcerer realized they had to stick together and improve their skills to survive, as the goblins weren't the only threat. So were the bullies. The sorcerer had seen the bullies forcing another student to give up skills like charm, which probably controls people, and puppeteer, which hints at controlling others like puppets. The nerds weren't just leveling up for outside threats, but also to deal with dangers within the camp. To keep an eye on things, the otaku followed the bullies into the forest and overheard a plan to create a harem at camp. They quickly warned the class representative, who decided to level up and face the bullies head-on. However, the bullies had recently mastered the charm and puppeteer skills, making things more difficult. Despite this, with great bravery, the class rep confronted the bullies. Unexpectedly, the nerds swiftly took them down and used magic to seal their sinister abilities. With their harem plan exposed, the bullies fled the camp but promised revenge. Chaos spread, and in the end, the camp was burned to the ground. The popular girls blamed the nerds, accusing them of starting the conflict with the bullies. Most of the students followed the crowd and blamed the otakus. A class representative, along with a few others who didn't believe the nerds were guilty, tried to defend them, but it wasn't enough. As a result, the nerds were kicked out of camp. When Haruka heard the story, he was moved to tears and hugged his friends for all they had gone through. He even offered to host a mushroom party so they could chat and eat together. Haruka spent the night with his friends, realizing that having company wasn't so bad after all. At dawn, he said goodbye to his classmates, and one asked if he would join them in following the river to become adventurers. Haruka admitted he wouldn't want to team up with anyone else, but in his usual mysterious manner, he declined and told them to go on without him. As he watched the nerds leave, Haruka reflected that his weak skills would only slow them down. He decided to find the class reps to get to the bottom of things. During his search, he encountered a wolf monster, got bitten, but defeated it with a blow to the head. By nightfall, he reached his class's destroyed campsite and used his detection ability to find human footprints crossing the river. Following the tracks, he spotted the popular girl in the distance and thought he should have stayed home to enjoy roasted mushrooms. He was about to leave when the most popular girls confronted him. Haruka tried to run, but when he heard one of them say, "Please stop," he paused to see if that's really what she said. The popular girl quickly explained they were looking for the nerds to apologize, realizing how serious their mistake had been. After all, they were only alive because of them. Haruka found it odd that these spoiled girls wanted to apologize, since that never happened in the original world. Still, he told them it was impossible to catch up with the nerds. One of the girls insisted on hearing what he knew, so Haruka challenged them with hard questions. Could they escape the forest? Could they face monsters? Were they really going to find their saviors and apologize, or would they just give up? His blunt words made the girls cry like frightened children, afraid they'd die in the endless forest. They begged Haruka to teach them how to survive and make things right. Afterward, Haruka noticed his subjugation ability had activated, listing the three girls as subjugated: Popular Leader, Popular Girl A, and Popular Girl B. Like it or not, he was now bound to them by fate. As the sun rose after hours of walking, the three girls trailed him like ducklings following their mother. Their clueless behavior and vacant stares were driving Haruka crazy, especially as he feared the moment they'd start slaying wolf monsters and delivering their crystals like loyal pets returning a toy. At least that's how he imagined the subjugation ability worked. In the middle of these frantic thoughts, Haruka noticed one of the girls was hurt, so he offered her a healing potion. Instead of using it correctly, she poured the entire potion on him, thinking that was the command. In that moment, he realized if the class rep found out what happened to the girls, she'd go berserk, and he couldn't face her with her authority. As Haruka was figuring out how to break the spell, the class rep appeared behind him, shouting for his attention. Meanwhile, the bullies were planning to target the girls at the old campsite, but had other issues to handle first. Haruka tries to call the class representative by her name but can't remember it, which really annoys her. She loudly expresses her frustration. Soon, the other class reps catch up, out of breath, and their leader asks what happened to the preppy girls since they don't look well. Even Haruka is unsure, though it seems his subjugation skill left them looking like zombies. The class rep asks if he used the skill on them, and Haruka reluctantly nods. She gets upset, reminding him that this skill is only for monsters. Haruka explains it was an accident, but the girls doubt him, giving him cold stares that nearly freeze him. He manages to escape the tense moment, but the girls demand he stay put. Frustrated, Haruka wonders if this was the quiet life he was promised in this new world. The leader of the reps shakes Shimazaki, the head of the preppy girls, until she snaps out of it. The class rep then calls Haruka back to gather everyone and figure things out. Left alone for now, Haruka considers practicing his house expansion skill, maybe even building a base. But when he activates the skill, he ends up tragically buried in the ground, with only his neck above the surface. The class rep has to pull Haruka aside so he can explain everything Shimazaki told her. According to Shimazaki, Haruka came to help everyone, prompting the girls to bow in gratitude. Despite this, Haruka says he wants to go home, but the girls scold him, reminding him of his promised help. Confused, the class rep asks what he means by going home. Haruka explains that he built his own house after being thrown into this world. The girls are excited by this revelation, and the leader immediately calls for a new strategy meeting, leaving Haruka out once again. The class rep asks how many people can stay in his house, and Haruka says that by squeezing about 240 could fit, especially if they don't mind using the bathroom and kitchen. The girls are fascinated that his house even has rooms like that, and the leader is shocked it's a mansion in the middle of nowhere. Encouraged by her friends, the leader politely asks if they can stay at his house for the night. Haruka, stunned at the thought of hosting so many girls, can't say no and leads them to his home, using his skills to guide them through the dark. After a long walk, the girls are exhausted, unable to keep up with his fast pace. Once they catch their breath, they realize they've arrived at a mansion in the middle of nowhere. The discovery excites the group of girls more than anything they've experienced in this harsh new world. Haruka finds it odd that the girls seem to like his house even more than the nerds did. It's now time to show them around, and as he points out the bathroom, most of the girls rush ahead to bathe, tossing their clothes in the air as they go. Haruka watches, amazed at how wild they become after their time in the forest. With the house now full, Haruka sets up a tent outside for some privacy. Just as he starts enjoying the solitude, the class leader interrupts to thank him for his support. Since the boys left, the girls have been anxious, but now they're much more relaxed. It's surprising how much a nice room, good food, and a warm bath can lift spirits. Despite this, she confesses that she hasn't led her group well through all the chaos. Haruka reassures her, saying she's done enough even if she can't do what Oda and the others can. He explains that the nerds were built for this kind of situation and knew exactly what to do, while the rest of them are just trying to survive. This comforts her somewhat, though she still wonders if Haruka is the real outlier for being able to build a mansion in the wilderness. Her sharp observation catches him off guard. After wishing him good night, she leaves and the girls finally get to enjoy a proper bath and a good night's sleep. In the mansion, the class rep ends up with the least comfortable spot, but she's content sitting quietly in his corner, while Haruka is lost in thought about the girls and he senses it's going to be a long night. At dawn, a girl apologizes for waking him but tells him breakfast is ready. Startled, Haruka doesn't recognize her and asks for another half hour of sleep. The girl teases that he doesn't seem like he's getting up anytime soon. Feeling awkward, he changes the subject by asking what's for breakfast. She says it's mushrooms and grilled fish, which excites him since he's been eating only mushrooms for days. As they step out of the tent, he accidentally bumps heads with her. She recovers while Haruka skips the apologies and dives straight into the fish. With the first bite, his love for the fish becomes undeniable. The girl, speaking for her group, asks if Haruka lives near a stream. He admits he does, but has only been eating mushrooms because the fish are too quick and smart to catch. Curious, he asks if they have an easier method. The girls show him their technique by using electricity and instantly kill the fish at the river. Amazed, Haruka asks her to do it again, and when she gathers the electricity in her hands, he captures the spell using his packaging skill, applying himself to the river. Thrilled, he celebrates catching fish for the first time and to his surprise, discovers he's developed his own electric magic. Using his packaging ability, he can capture any elemental magic and recreate it uniquely. The girl remarks that this seems a bit overpowered and Haruka agrees, saying it's likely a mix of his packaging skill and his Master of None ability. He still recalls how he got the worst powers while everyone else received the best, and controlling the electric magic almost made him wet himself with excitement. Later, Haruka meets with the leader of the girls and asks if they decided their next move. She explains they haven't reached a consensus but are likely heading to the city. Haruka assumes they want to catch up with the nerds and they confirm they need to apologize. The leader stresses the importance of leveling up before the journey, which Haruka agrees with and offers to help. The leader thanks him but clarifies their goal isn't to pursue Oda and the other nerds. Haruka feels a bit let down as he would have enjoyed seeing a showdown between the girls and the nerds. Still, they all gather to begin their training. Haruka asks everyone's level, and those in front reveal they're between levels 16 and 21. He's stunned given he's only at level 7. True to his word, he quickly spots 3 kobolds lounging in a nearby bush and asks the girls to handle them since the monsters are only half their level. The girls begin stretching and getting ready for the fight, but when the time comes, they're easily defeated. Haruka criticizes their performance, calling it pathetic, while the girls grumble that no one warned them the creature would bite. Later, instead of enjoying peace in his tent, Haruka watches as the girls gather inside to review the battle. Before long, they leave feeling more confident, except for the purple-haired girl who had woken Haruka earlier. She stays to apologize, explaining she had only been testing him because she was nearly captured during an earlier attack by the boys, leaving her traumatized. She wanted to see if Haruka would hurt them, but he proved otherwise. She adds she'll wake him tomorrow for breakfast. The next morning, Haruka starts his day with fish while the girls train for a rematch with the kobolds. After training, some girls are too exhausted to stand and others fake being sick to avoid fighting, but those who push through manage to defeat the kobolds. After their victory, they treat the creatures like pet dogs. The leader tells Haruka they're ready to head to the city with him, but he never agreed to go. Later, Haruka cautions the leader that they cannot predict what awaits them, so they must remain alert and stay focused. That night, in the heavy rain, a student sprints desperately attempting to flee from someone chasing him. After tripping over a stone, he crashes to the ground and is quickly captured. He cries out that he lacks the power the man seeks, but the pursuer disregards him and strikes. The following day, Haruka leads the group through the forest, constantly aware that the bullies might be hiding nearby, watching. As leader, his priority is keeping everyone safe, and the best way to do that is to quickly reach the city. However, it wasn't just the bullies they needed to worry about. The forest itself held many dangers. Suddenly, a massive orc blocks their path. Haruka orders the group to stand back and carefully observe as he confronts the monster. The orc swings its club but misses, allowing Haruka to assess its speed. According to the group's knowledge, this type of orc has strong resistance to physical attacks, and magic is the best way to defeat it. With that in mind, Haruka opens his menu and searches for an effective spell among the 4 elements: fire, water, earth, and air. He had mastered these abilities through practical tasks, even using them for household chores. In this fight, though, Haruka wasn't completely on his own. The orc resumes its attack, smashing a tree Haruka was using for cover. As its swings grow dangerously close, Haruka quickly maneuvers behind the orc and strikes it with a stick, causing the creature to cry out and collapse. With this victory, Haruka becomes pensive, having just claimed that orcs are resistant to physical attacks, yet he defeats one with a mere stick. The girls gather closer, trying to make sense of the strange situation, especially since they learned nothing from the bizarre battle. Even Haruka can't explain it, but he promises to fight properly next time using magic. Speaking of which, the group soon encounters another orc. This time, Haruka tests his fire magic, hurling a fireball and easily winning again, leaving everyone puzzled by how effortlessly he's handling these fights. The girls, still unable to gain anything from the battle, realize Haruka is too overpowered for a normal approach. However, by nightfall, they aren't as frustrated, especially with roasted meat ready at their improvised campsite. A little further off, Haruka uses earth magic to set up a deep pit trap to keep enemies away. His magical tents not only repel monsters, but also detect presences, ensuring the girls' safety. With everything secured, he plots the next day's route using a summon map. While checking the river's location, he suddenly senses enemies nearby and rushes to investigate. From a distance, he spots figures and fears they're the bullies, but it's just some athletes who approach him in a friendly manner. Haruka, suspicious of the athletes, assumes they're after something or someone in the woods. However, they clarify they aren't after any girl, but Haruka himself. As for the girls, they don't trust anyone else in the class. Setting that aside, the athlete leader warns Haruka of a skill roaming the forest that's even more dangerous than hypnosis or marionette. Haruka recalls a skill called hijack, and the athlete confirms it's exactly that, though it's not the delinquents who possess it, but an outsider. Haruka then taunts the athletes, suggesting they hadn't considered he might hold the skill himself. They admit it would be better in his hands than the bullies, but ask if he really knows how to use it. Embarrassed, Haruka admits he only knows the magic of servitude, something they're unfamiliar with, but trusts that he won't use it recklessly. Slightly insulted, Haruka warns them not to underestimate loners. The athletes insist they mean no harm and just wanted to caution them about the hijack skill, while keeping an eye on the bullies in the forest. Finally, they ask Haruka to apologize to the girls for the drama at camp and bid him farewell. Meanwhile, the class rep, who had been secretly listening, remains silent. On the morning of the 17th, Haruka gathers the team to resume their journey, and for some reason, the girls seem unusually upbeat, leaving him lost in thought. As he steps aside, the class representative approaches, wanting to discuss the conversation he had with the Kakizaki group. Haruka explains they apologize for everything, but that's not her focus. Instead, she apologizes for taking so long to bring up a serious matter. She's the one with the hijack skill. Surprised that Haruka figured it out, she admits she asked Oda's group to keep it secret. Now that he knows, she asks why he helped her despite this dangerous ability, which lets her steal a target's skill by taking their life. Haruka is unfazed, and she explains that it's considered the most terrifying and sinister ability. Haruka notes that even the nerds weren't scared and sealed away other dangerous skills, but left hers untouched, believing only she should wield it. Touched, the class rep tears up, blaming Haruka for making her cry, and he jokingly runs away, though she's grateful for his support. Later, the group continues toward the river. When they reach the spot Haruka had in mind, he suddenly dashes off and tests his magic infusion. He then uses his magic weight skill to lighten his power, allowing him to leap high into the air, jumping from branch to branch until he reaches a great height. Despite all his efforts, he still hasn't learned to fly, so he crashes down, almost losing all his HP. He would have died without his magic infusion, but at least he figured out the right path by briefly playing bird. Still shaken from the fall, Haruka tries to explain to the class rep how he returned to the escort, all battered, but it doesn't go well. At dawn, they set off again, this time taking a faster route. Along the way, various events unfold, like the girls taking a group bath and a trio of orcs chasing them. But the team stays united, moving toward their goal. Eventually, the storm passes, and they find the exit to the forest, with the girls cheering. Haruka, however, remains cautious, unsure of what dangers might await in the hills. Checking his menu, he discovers he's learned the airwalk skill from his previous leap. He quickly tests it while scanning the area for safety. As they continue, he spots some locals under attack by monsters. However, he hesitates, knowing they might not be good people. Despite his doubts, the girls vote to help, and the class rep promises to fight if they turn out to be bandits. Knowing how she'd react, Haruka decides to go alone to avoid putting his companions at risk. To reach the endangered group, he repeats the spell from the day before to run faster, but this time adds a small wind tornado to boost his speed. Unfortunately, the tornado pulls the class rep along, and she grabs his cloak to avoid hitting the ground. Worse, they realize they can't stop their flight as planned, crashing near the group's carriage like a meteor. After the dust clears, Haruka has already defeated the surrounding monsters along with the class rep herself. The group's leader, a black-haired man named After, introduces himself, while another man, Gatek, joins in. Haruka asks why they were attacked, and After explains that merchants were ambushed by a pack of great green wolves, and the guild placed a bounty on them. The group tried to cash in, but it went badly. Despite the failure, After asks them to gather what's left. Haruka brews a mushroom for Gatek, who excitedly identifies it as a buff shroom, a valuable item that provides boosts. Surprised, Haruka shares it with the others, and the girls quickly recover. Watching them, Haruka feels oddly at ease with these two men being around such beautiful girls. Soon after the rest of the group catches up to Haruka, the girls are thrilled to meet an elf for the first time. The locals then guide them to the long-awaited city of Onmi. To mark the occasion, the group draws a line in the dirt, symbolizing the start of a new chapter, and they jump over it, leaping toward the future. Meanwhile, the bullies are leveling up in the forest, searching for the girls for an eventual showdown. A boy they captured suggests they break the seal on the puppet and hypnosis skills, but to do so, they need someone with a sealing ability. In other words, they must find the nerds with that skill before exacting revenge. Oddly, as this conversation unfolds, the boy lets out a sinister laugh, while the athletes observe the enemies from a distance, sensing trouble ahead. Returning to Onmi, the group is captivated by its beauty and vibrant atmosphere, fully realizing they're in a new world. Everyone is happy, except Haruka. who feels out of place as a loner. The girls are excited by the unique clothing and convenience stores filled with unfamiliar items. However, the class rep reminds them of an important task. As she rushes off, Haruka feels relief knowing he got them here safely and believes his job is done. Two girls joke about the buildings looking like cupcakes and wonder if they're edible. The class rep has to remind them stones aren't for eating. Struggling to keep pace with the group's excitement, she asks Haruka for help, but he's already lounging in the shade with a drink. She scolds him, acknowledging his mission is complete, but insists relaxing here is too soon. She blows a whistle, ordering the girls to line up, and announces the plan. First, they need to visit the Adventurers Guild, sell off their loot, and register as adventurers, then find lodging. The next day, they'll inquire about Oda's group. Shimazaki, leader of the popular girls, asks why Oda's group is a lower priority. Feeling cornered, the rep explains it wasn't intentional. Haruka takes the chance to tease Shimazaki about being worried for the nerds, which she denies flustered. They eventually head to the Adventurers Guild, and Haruka feels intimidated just by the outside of the building. Inside, it's even worse, filled with rough-looking characters who stare at them. A man from the guild approaches Haruka, telling him that the guild master wants to meet him. Haruka quickly asks the class rep to handle registration while he deals with the situation. Nervous under all the attention, he heads to Getek and the intimidating guild master. The guild master asks if he is Haruka, and trembling, Haruka confirms. To his surprise, the master stands up and politely thanks him for saving Ofter's group, relieving Haruka, who had expected something far worse. Feeling more at ease, Haruka finds the counter where he can sell his magic stones. The staff member explains that the stones will take time to assess and will be ready by tomorrow. Meanwhile, the girls inform Haruka they've completed the registration. Both Ofter and Getek admit they underestimated the girls, never expecting them to be over level 30. Shimazaki nudges Haruka to register, and for once, he's eager to join an official group. Seeing his enthusiasm, the class rep tells Ofter and Getek that Haruka is destined to become an excellent adventurer, as he was the one who got them safely to the city. Haruka begins his registration, but quickly finds out he needs to be at least level 10. He's only level 9. He falls to his knees in desperation, pleading for an exception, but the staff member remains firm, explaining he must also be part of a group. He can only progress solo as an apprentice at level 20 and won't be recognized as a true adventurer until he hits level 30. Crushed, Haruka realizes level 20 is still far off, and his loner skill prevents him from officially joining any group. Seeing his distress, the class rep takes charge of finding lodging, leading the team to a hotel recommended by the guild. Haruka is uneasy about the place, and as they enter, a young receptionist warmly greets them, mentioning the guild had notified her of their arrival. Spotting hearts on the doors, Haruka suspects it might be a love hotel, but the class rep tells him to quiet down. Later, he finds the rooms normal and feels comfortable in bed, though he admits to missing the forest. Shimazaki, meanwhile, wonders where Oda and the other boys are. By day 19 of their stay in this world, everyone enjoys breakfast as the class rep announces the city is relatively safe and has plenty of shops. Seeing the girls' excitement, Haruka feels they'll thrive here, though he plans to return to the forest once he sells his magic stones. At the guild, a staff member tosses a bag of money on the counter, apologizing that it's all they can offer for now. Haruka tries to calm her down while the guild master steps in, reminding them they haven't even finished counting all the stones. Haruka notices they don't have enough money to pay everything up front, so they suggest installments. The master agrees and sets aside 8 million heals as the first payment. Haruka realizes this sum is roughly equal to 52,000 yen in Japanese currency. The guild worker then explains the market value of items in this world, noting that Haruka's F-rank magic stones totaled 8 million heals, plus a bonus from the Green Wolf mission. With the money in hand, the class rep announces it's time to buy supplies. Getek suggests a shop he knows in Haruka, imagining it might be a place filled with women, foolishly follows. However, they soon arrive at a store selling dungeon items. Although the shopkeeper seems strange, he's friendly. Haruka eagerly tries out an invisibility cloak, power gloves, a fire staff, and a mana-cutting sword. He becomes obsessed with a necklace called 7 Shops, which can combine the effects of 7 items. His excitement is cut short when the class rep orders him back to the hotel, as it's time for bed. Frustrated, the loner asks to test one more item, the mistletoe twig that boosts magical staffs and rods. However, as he grabs it, he accidentally activates it, fusing all the equipment before even paying for a necklace. The furious shopkeeper informs him the necklace is worth over 10 million heals. Getek and the class rep try to negotiate a discount, and by the 20th, Haruka is completely broke, though he still has things he wants to buy. Fortunately, The price is reduced to 8 million, but he's left penniless. He can't gather more magic stones to sell since outsiders need a permit to leave the city, and sneaking out with the girls is out of the question. The class rep would never allow it. Realizing city life isn't for him, Haruka decides to return to the forest. Armed with an invisibility cloak fused with his peasant set, he sneaks past his classmates, heading for the city wall. But just as he prepares to leap over and escape, a few girls call out, causing him to crash into the wall. Meanwhile, he and the girls witness one classmate almost stripping in public to try out a new outfit. Haruka rushes to stop her, and his first escape plan fails. On the 21st, the girls prepare for their first mission. Haruka asks to join the group, but the class rep quickly rejects him after his escape attempt the day before. Still, the loner slips past the gate guard with his invisibility cloak and heads outside. Thrilled, he dashes into the forest, ignoring obstacles, including bandits attacking a carriage with a defenseless girl. The bandits, not wanting any witnesses, attack Haruka, forcing him to fight. He summons his fire bullet and defeats them, realizing afterward that his wooden staff has evolved into a stronger cane, possibly due to the mistletoe twig or the fire staff he fused earlier. However, the bandits rise again, noticing their foe is just a level 9 boy. They unleash advanced weapon skills, slash, double, and dash. But Haruka sees they lack mastery and tire themselves out. With ease, he defeats them, understanding that while weapon skills are powerful, these thugs were weak and unskilled. The girl from the carriage, Marielle, a noble with a quirky personality, thanks Haruka and introduces herself. She explains she's the daughter of a local lord and asks him to accompany her, feeling unsafe after the attack. Naturally, she is more than happy to express her appreciation for his assistance, although Haruka was anxious to return to the woods. That last detail persuaded him to remain and lend a hand. Inside the carriage, Mariel inquires about the city Haruka hails from, and he explains that it was a dreadful place with a terrible guild that doesn't even allow visitors to leave freely. Because of this and other factors, the boy is convinced the city's lord is as awful as the place he rules. Upon hearing this, Mariel begins to cry as she is the daughter of the Lord Haruka just insulted. And surprisingly, this carriage is headed back to Omu. Realizing this, Haruka panics and tries to escape, but the noble insists she must reward him for rescuing her. Meanwhile, in the forest, the athletes and bullies clash, and the leader of the athletes is struck by an enemy's blade. After their first ally fell, the group grasped the gravity of the situation. However, the blade that struck the boy wasn't from the bullies, but from a lone swordsman who seemed to fight independently. This warrior swiftly dispatched the next bully by plunging his sword into his opponent's chest, taking down another soon after. Yet the bullies, furious at their friend's quick defeat, kept charging, only to be effortlessly cut down. Realizing their fate, the remaining bullies fled, only for the swordsman to intercept them, proving no one would escape without his permission. Turning to Haruka, who dreaded returning to Omu, Mariel gave him a pleading look and chided him for making such a fuss. Unable to resist, he reluctantly followed her to the Lord of Omu's grand mansion, feeling uneasy as they entered. While examining a painting that seemed to show the Lord and his wife, he plotted a swift exit. But before he could sneak away, Mariel appeared, questioning why he hadn't waited for her to change as she'd asked. Haruka fibbed that he was just stepping outside, but Mariel saw through him, calling him out. Frustrated, she insisted he stayed, vowing the warrior would be rewarded one way or another. To prove she wasn't lying, the noble led the guest to a true feast laid out on the table. Abandoning thoughts of leaving, she indulged in the food and later asked a maid to bring the cash reward for his rescue. Knowing the hero had no identification in this land, she also handed him an Omui ID card, allowing him to come and go from the city freely. In return, she only hoped he would remember the town's name. However, Haruka was more focused on the pudding's texture than any obligation. Blushing, Mariel murmured that she dressed up for him only for him to act this way. On the 22nd, he returned to the inn, assuring his group he hadn't tried to escape. He was invited to the city lord's mansion. Suspicious, the girls questioned his invitation, but Haruka feigned ignorance. Eventually, some dropped the topic and went on a mission, leaving him hopeful that the others would also forget. But before departing, the class rep insisted he couldn't leave the city. Haruka nonchalantly agreed. Alone once more, he flashed a sly grin, readying another escape with his invisibility cloak. This time, he had a trump card, the ID given by the Lord's daughter. He dashed for the gate of Omu, but first planned to buy supplies with his reward from Mariel and eat everything but mushrooms. Finally, he decided to leave a note for the class representative, hoping it wouldn't upset her. He simply mentioned he was going to check on the athletes in the forest and asked the girls to keep leveling up while he was away. With everything set, he headed to the exit where a burly soldier guarded the passage. Haruka showed his new ID and quickly secured his release from Omu. This time, if a carriage was attacked along the way, he'd ignore it and keep going. Eventually, he reached beloved forest, where mushrooms grew, the underbrush, fish swam in the river, and familiar monsters lingered. Haruka felt at home but couldn't wait to reach his cave. He resumed his run, easily defeating a large orc that appeared, unusual, since such creatures typically stay deeper in the forest. He was glad he'd stocked up on supplies in Onmui, which made the encounter effortless. As the sun began to set, he sensed something was amiss, especially when he found a bloodstain on a rock. He doubted it was from the nerds who were seasoned Isekai pros, so he assumed it belonged to the athletes. Soon he noticed footprints and a large trail of blood on the path ahead. Without delay, he ran in that direction and found the athletes badly wounded on a rock. Seeing they were alive, he threw healing potions made from mushrooms to save them. The leader revived enough to see Haruka and asked if the girls were safe. Haruka assured him they were secure in the city, thanks to the athletes. Kazazaki was relieved, feeling he had helped the class. Haruka called them the best athletes they could ask for. Later that night, the protagonist learned all the delinquents were dead and the nerds had vanished. As for the bully's killer, it was an unknown force, unstoppable, and who also stole all their weapons. Kazazaki believed this swordsman had planned it all, likely aiming for the class representative, who possessed the powerful abduction skill, enabling her to steal abilities from those she killed. Haruka worried since he thought only he and the nerds knew about her power, but the athletes assumed it since the swordsman had asked about her. Ultimately, the swordsman spared them, hoping they'd eventually go after the representative, which he could exploit. However, the athletes instead wandered the forest, only to end up near death. The mysterious enemy is sure to follow the blood trail here, but with Haruka's help, the team leader believes they can win by combining forces. Hearing this, Haruka reflects on how he hates getting entangled in conflicts. He only wants a peaceful, solitary life in the forest. However, duty calls and he can't ignore the situation. He agrees to help but insists on going alone, sending the others to the city to join the women. After they leave, Haruka knows it might be safer with backup, but if the swordsman kills everyone, there will be no one left to protect the women. Meanwhile, the girls search Omu for the lone wanderer, though the class representative remains anxious despite Haruka's letter. The protagonist learns from the athletes that the swordsman's powerful weapon skill leaves him vulnerable once activated. Haruka decides he must train to exploit this flaw, but after defeating a few goblins, he realizes he needs stronger foes. Fortune leads him to the Goblin King, a chance to level up. Carefully dodging its massive club, Haruka strikes with a potent spell, ending the battle. Yet he's startled when the Goblin Emperor, level 50, far above Haruka's level 9, appears. Haruka realizes he can't confront the monster directly, but knowing escape is unlikely, he decides to use his previous tactic, combining all his dreadful skills into one spell. With this, he charges at the goblin and strikes, causing some damage, though the monster quickly recovers and retaliates. The goblin slashes at Haruka, who merrily dodges, spotting a small opening to counterattack with his staff. His strike nearly halves the Goblin Emperor's HP, but the creature begins to heal, launching a forceful skill that throws Haruka against a tree. Barely clinging to consciousness, Haruka recalls his mission and pushes forward, knowing his friends depend on him. Hours later, as dawn breaks over the forest, Haruka, exhausted but victorious, shouts in relief, celebrating his level 11 upgrade. Returning to his cave, he discovers new skills, including his invented spell that now seamlessly combines different magics, allowing instant attacks. Soon after, a man approaches his dwelling, lowering his hood to reveal Tanaka, the boy who once seemed a victim but had much more cunning plans. Meanwhile, the girls return to Omu after another day of hunting, only to find the athletes by the city wall. In the meantime, Kakikaze explains that Haruka stayed behind to confront an enemy alone in the forest. The solitary wanderer greets Tanaka with sarcasm upon his arrival, while the enemy bitterly regrets not yet reaching the class representative through those nearly exhausted athletes, especially after all his effort to infiltrate the bullies and control them. At that, Haruka realizes that Tanaka has been behind everything all along. He admits to using the delinquents to divide the class entirely. Enraged, Haruka demands information about the rest of the group members aside from the athletes and bullies. Tanaka responds coldly that they are all dead, but then decides to end the small talk as his main goal is to unlock the abduction skill as soon as possible and not waste time on a loser like Haruka, whom he considers to have the weakest skills. Upon hearing this, Haruka raises his weapon, blocking Tanaka's exit. Tanaka then decides to kill the solitary wanderer on the spot. Tanaka unleashes his full strength, sending rocks hurtling toward Haruka as a warning. He remarks that back in the White Room, when everyone was selecting skills, he purposely went last to ensure that all the remaining skills were the worst ones. Smirking, he taunts Haruka, asking if he thinks he can defeat him with those useless abilities. Then Tanaka hurls even larger rocks at him. Haruka prepares to defend, but Tanaka activates his unique ability, Tweak. Instantly, Haruka's body begins to twitch uncontrollably, making it hard for him to move. Despite the struggle, he narrowly dodges the rocks, only for Tanaka to summon crystal spikes directly beneath his feet. Haruka dodges those as well, but the effort leaves him drained, his body feeling unnaturally heavy. Tanaka acknowledges Haruka's skill, impressed, and asks how long Haruka has suspected him. Haruka replies that he had doubts from the start. He expected Tanaka to either join the studious types or stay alone, so seeing him with the delinquents seems suspicious. Haruka then asks when Tanaka began acting on this scheme. Tanaka reveals that he started as soon as they were teleported from the classroom. Though he missed out on the hijack skill, he noticed the Tweak skill, which allows minor control over others, and chose it. Using this, he manipulated the foolish delinquents, and the rest followed. Tanaka concludes, saying they talked enough, binding Haruka's foot with a vine before launching a powerful fire spell at him, confident it will be the final blow. To Tanaka's astonishment, he absorbs the flames into his staff due to the power of the herb fused with it. Wasting no time, he counters, aiming to strike Tanaka while he's still stunned. However, it turns out Tanaka was merely pretending. He draws a hidden sword to block Haruka's assault and then forces him back. Tanaka then summons all of his weapons, declaring that he finally has the chance to try each of them. Rushing at Haruka with the sword, he rapidly switches weapons with every swing, leaving Haruka struggling to keep up. Haruka is forced onto the defensive, barely managing to fend off Tanaka's swift and unpredictable attacks. In an attempt to escape, Haruka dives into the bushes, but a powerful strike sends him flying across the river. Realizing he's outmatched, Haruka wonders how Tanaka is wielding so many weapons and abilities at once. Tanaka approaches, demanding his surrender, but Haruka rises and asks if he's using a copycat skill to mimic their classmates' abilities. Tanaka confirms, adding that his plan was to copy the class rep's hijack ability, then eliminate her to possess the real thing. Afterward, he intends to kill everyone else to steal their abilities too. Haruka realizes he's facing his most formidable foe yet. Tanaka launches a series of attacks with different weapons, but Haruka only strikes an illusion. Tanaka is actually behind him. Haruka realizes this tactic isn't working, so he lowers his staff to the ground, making Tanaka think he's surrendered. He rushes toward Haruka, but Haruka sidesteps, mimicking Goku's Ultra Instinct. He then taunts Tanaka, asking if he can only use each copied skill 3 times. This strikes a nerve and Tanaka begins to panic, realizing he's lost control of the situation. Haruka reveals that he figured out the flaw in Tanaka's copycat ability long ago and purposefully baited him into wasting his copy moves. Furious at being outmaneuvered, Tanaka still has 1 copy left of each skill and, in a desperate attempt, attacks Haruka again. Haruka evades the assault and counters with a strong kick, knocking Tanaka back. Sensing an opening, Haruka decides to end the fight quickly, but Tanaka suddenly unleashes a powerful blast, forcing Haruka to pause. Determined not to lose, Tanaka summons a dagger, dashes forward, and delivers 2 swift strikes before vanishing, reappearing above Haruka. Haruka dodges, but as dust clouds the air, he realizes it was just a ruse. Tanaka is actually hiding behind a rock, charging his ultimate skill, Instant Death. He strikes Haruka with it, instantly ending his life as the skill's name suggests. Tanaka laughs like a villain and stomps on Haruka's head, preparing to leave. But suddenly, Haruka stands up and asks why he's leaving so quickly. Shocked, Tanaka demands to know how he survived instant death. Haruka reveals that he possesses the General Health skill, which grants him resistance to status effects, including instant death. He also has his luck stat fully maxed out, which significantly reduces the chances of instant death. Tanaka, shocked, demands to know why he collapsed then, and Haruka explains it was all an act. Tanaka, still in disbelief, insists that moving so quickly under his Tweak skill should be impossible. Haruka then reveals another secret. He used a skill called Blockhead, which lets him control others like puppets. By using it on himself, he could counter the Tweak's effects. Tanaka can no longer contain himself, immediately unleashing a flurry of weapon skills at Haruka, who effortlessly blocks each one. Overwhelmed and defeated, the nerd collapses to his knees, unable to accept that his flawless calculations had failed. He recalls feeling constantly bored at school, being a genius far beyond his classmates and wishing for something exciting to cure his boredom. When he and his classmates were transported to this world, he recognized the skill choices needed to make his life thrilling. He was more than ready to kill his classmates to achieve his goal, convinced that with all the abilities, he'd be perfect and unbeatable. Now losing to someone with useless skills seemed unimaginable. In a frenzy, he charges recklessly at Haruka, who easily disarms him. Thinking Tanaka is out of tricks, Haruka prepares to finish him off. But suddenly, Tanaka's sword flies back and pierces Haruka. Haruka realizes Tanaka was still hiding his remote control abilities. With a triumphant grin, Tanaka declares that he has won after all and begins slashing at Haruka. Haruka strikes him hard, but he manages to reduce the impact using his packing skill. Determined to finish the fight, Haruka unleashes the Gambit skill, delivering a blow that Tanaka cannot evade. Tanaka loses consciousness and collapses to the ground. Haruka, exhausted, mutters that while he may not have any overpowered abilities, he still has his own tricks. However, he's completely drained and the effects of the damage are finally catching up with him. Unable to stand any longer, he drops to his knees, feeling like it's over. Just before he loses consciousness, thoughts of the class rep and his friends flash through his mind, until someone catches him. Haruka opens his eyes and sees the nerds by his side. Though disappointed that they arrived late, they urged him to complain later. They give him healing potions and support him as they head back to town. On the way, Haruka asks why they were in the forest, and they explain they had just returned from a hunting trip. They noticed their classmates and found out from the athletes that he was trying to take on Tanaka. Without delay, they hurried to assist him, though they arrived a bit too late. Soon, they reach the city, where everyone is eagerly waiting at the gates. The girls surround Haruka, offering themselves as his prize, but he shyly steps away, opting to high-five the leader of the athletes instead. The girls pull him inside, and the TikTok star apologizes to the nerds for past actions. Haruka feels that this is the happy ending everyone hoped for and realizes he no longer has a part to play. Just as he's about to slip away unnoticed, the class rep catches him and demands to know where he's headed. Surprised, he freezes and she suddenly hugs him, confessing she was truly worried. Haruka apologizes, but the class rep insists that an apology isn't enough. She's gathered all the girls in the class, ready to give him a stern talking to for sneaking out of the city without a word. Haruka panics, but he has no choice as the girls pull him back into the city to scold him. In a following scene, the protagonist has an unusual dream about a mysterious girl who had long awaited her moment in the depths of darkness. Waking up in his bed at the inn, he feels worn out and sore from his fierce fight against Tanaka. Outside his room, he encounters the nerds pursuing a rare item in the dungeon that can alter others' perceptions. Haruka, annoyed, remarks that it suits someone as shady as Oda, prompting the boy to fire back that he doesn't need commentary from the loner. The nerds then head off on yet another mission, and the protagonist, reflecting on his recent encounters with them and his victory over Tanaka, thinks it's time to get back to his usual life in the cave. However, just as he's about to leave, Haruka senses the presence of the class representative, whose eyes flash with anger, ready to reprimand him for his reckless choice. With a stern look, she calls him aside, and rather than giving another scolding like yesterday's, pointedly reminds him he hasn't yet explained his actions. Taking her chance, she asks why he took such a dangerous risk alone, and before he can respond, she implores him not to repeat it. Humbled, Haruka kneels and apologizes, and the girl accepts with grace. Relieved, Haruka realizes this is far more daunting than facing Tanaka, but he'd rather handle this than risk the representative's wrath. To avoid unjust criticism, he decides to pursue the item the nerds mentioned, a relic that can change how people view him. With this, Haruka believes he'll never be unfairly scolded again, so he sets off for the dungeon. Meanwhile, in Lord Omui's mansion, Muriel's father works tirelessly until she insists he take a break. He reluctantly agrees but worries about the sea on the frontier as rising monster activity threatens trade and the economy. Just then, a soldier rushes in from an expedition, warning that a monstrous horde is advancing. Unlike the soldier, Haruka strolls toward the dungeon until he senses nearby monsters. Soon, a horde appears, which he treats as merely a warm-up. At Omui's Adventurers Guild, the guild master asks the class representative to handle the threat on the road. Muriel bursts in, warning of an approaching orc horde and destroyed villages. Adventurers rally to defend the city, and she rushes off to alert her friends, wondering where Haruka is. Meanwhile, he charges at the orc horde, surprised to see so many orcs gathered, including an orc king. Despite only one strike, the loner quickly takes down most foes, while Omui's defense forces prepare to face an orc invasion. Haruka fights the level 37 orc king, unable to defeat him in a single blow, but a flurry of attacks brings the monster down. Seeing orcs scattered on the ground, Haruka briefly wonders what drew so many monsters here, though he's more focused on reaching the dungeon to find his rare item. He uses stealth to slip past the guards unnoticed. Inside, he imagines the cracked floor and long corridors have seen countless adventurers, yet his priority is locating his item. After opening several treasure chests with only worthless equipment, he regrets not asking about the item's location. Finally, he decides to visit the magic item shop's merchant in the city for guidance. As night falls, Omui's defenses brace for the orcs' arrival. The guildmaster worries they're delayed, and Mariel hesitantly confirms, sparking concerns that this could be false information. As the smoke clears, a shadowy figure appears, putting the soldiers on high alert. But it's only young Haruka, yawning as he strolls down the road. A representative rushes over, warning that the neighboring village was attacked by monsters, putting Onui in danger. Along with some classmates, the girls scold Haruka for disappearing and causing worry. He casually suggests he might have already defeated the monsters, though this doesn't stop their complaints. Later in the tavern, the lord's daughter and the guild master thank Haruka for defending the town, but urge him to be more cautious. Soon after, Mariel and the representative join in, leaving Haruka feeling even more unsettled. The guild master explains that the monsters have been increasingly active, hinting at an imminent invasion. Later, as Haruka lies in bed, he grumbles about the growing number of people nagging him, wishing he could return to his quiet life. Desperate, he sets out for a rumored item that might change how people see him. On the morning of the 27th, he arrives at the magic shop, startling the owner, who remembers him from a past incident. To calm the man, he explained that he wasn't there to buy anything, but to ask about an item that could make people like him more. Though unclear on details, the shop owner guessed he was referring to the pheromone ring and said it should be below the 50th dungeon floor. Excited, Haruka asked how many floors the dungeon had and learned there were about 100, but that he'd need to defeat a powerful boss on each level to advance. According to legend, the Dungeon Emperor resides there, though it's wrapped in mystery. To proceed safely, Haruka would need recovery items. After hearing this, he dashed to the general store, leaving the magic shop owner, who had more helpful items, disappointed. Meanwhile, two classmates were eavesdropping. Realizing Haruka's goal was the pheromone ring, they resolved to prevent him from causing trouble. Soon after, as Haruka confidently continued his quest, his perception skill alerted him to approaching figures, his classmates, looking furious. He asked why they were there, and one accused him of seeking the pheromone ring. Haruka denied it, claiming he was actually after Solomon's ring, a rare item that allows communication with animals. As no one believed his lie, the boy took a bolder step and ran straight to the dungeon. Upon arrival, the guard warned that it was closed due to imminent danger, but he wasn't going to stop the crowd alone. Inside, Haruka worried that the representative might find the pheromone ring before him, so he hurried ahead. A woman warned that he might fall into a trap running like that, but he assured her his luck would keep him safe. Suddenly, he tripped on a hidden wall and fell into a deep pit. His friend tried to catch him but couldn't reach him in time. Given the height, Haruka used earth magic to cushion his fall, bouncing safely to the bottom floor of the dungeon, close to where the final boss might appear. To get back, he used air walk, but the endless floors made it impossible to climb up. Realizing his spatial awareness and trap detection had reached level 1, he cast both skills and found the corridor clear of traps. He was now on floor 101, just beneath the final floor, likely near a hidden boss. Meanwhile, his classmates set out to find him as Haruka pushed through the dense, powerful, magical smoke ahead. As he walked, torches with blue flames lit up, revealing the path ahead until he reached a door that left no question about what lay beyond. Opening it, he was hit by a powerful magical barrier that pushed him back. Struggling to stay on his feet, he caught a glimpse of the Dungeon Emperor, level 100. Meanwhile, on floor 47, the group had set up bonfires, discussing Haruka's location. With each defeated floor boss, a teleport activated, allowing them to return to the dungeon's start, leading Shimazaki to think Haruka might have gone back. But Oda suspected he was at the dungeon's depths, where the Emperor's presence strengthened other monsters. Though Shimazaki thought this a myth, if true, it would make further progress challenging. Determined, they resolved to continue to rescue their friend. Haruka, meanwhile, used his skill to analyze his opponent, but the Emperor's stats remained a mystery. The Dungeon Emperor's racial classes, Dullan, Lich, and Undead King, were among the strongest, and Tanaka wouldn't stand a chance against such a foe. Knowing Liches excel at magic, Haruka realized he needed close combat to stand a chance. He struck with his staff, but the skeleton blocked with startling speed. Undeterred, he repeated the attack, only to be deflected once more. Yet he knew he had no choice but to defeat the Dungeon Emperor. On a stormy night filled with thunder, Mariel serves tea to her father and notes the swirling dark clouds above the ominous dungeon. Reflecting on this, the noblewoman fears they are on the brink of facing something far worse than the horde of orcs that just appeared. In response, the Lord of Onui instructs his daughter to send an urgent message to the Adventurers Guild to prepare for an emergency. Meanwhile, at the dungeon, Emperor Haruka determines that defeating a creature of this caliber will require combining his abilities with unmatched speed. Using his agility, he circles the monster and attempts to strike, but the Emperor blocks it effortlessly. Realizing his speed is insufficient, Haruka pushes himself further, yet his efforts are thwarted again. Undeterred, he strives to outpace the skeleton's almost supernatural reflexes, but the creature counters with a grazing blow that tears his tunic and nearly costs him his life. As the tension rises, Haruka's contact lenses unlock a new ability, momentary flashes of foresight. Though this gives him a chance to predict attacks, any error will mean certain death, forcing him to maintain absolute focus. With renewed vigilance, he resumes the fight. Amid the life-threatening clash, Haruka finds an odd humor in his perilous situation, a strange feeling that baffles him given the gravity of the moment. Funny or not, the truth is that he has almost no magic or energy left, which could spell his end. Meanwhile, the Dungeon Emperor remains unscathed, and Haruka knows that an attack now would mean certain defeat. Yet for some reason, the skeleton takes a few steps toward him but stops without attacking. Confused by this strange passivity, Haruka analyzes the situation and realizes this enemy is different. It doesn't seem intent on killing him. If it wanted to, it would have done so already. Refusing to give up, Haruka resumes his attack as an act of defiance. However, when the creature raises its sword to his neck, he halts, overwhelmed by doubts. There must be a reason why the skeleton is sparing him. As the skeleton lifts its weapon, Haruka notices miasma swirling around its body, seemingly controlling it like a malevolent force. Suddenly, his staff begins to glow, absorbing the miasma as if awakening a hidden power. Trusting this unexpected turn, Haruka lets the energy flow and strikes again, keeping his staff close to the dark substance to drain it completely and free the skeleton from its control. With determination, Haruka carries out his plan, confirming that the miasma was indeed controlling the dungeon boss. After the nightmare ends, he speculates that the skeleton sought death to escape its servitude, which is why it refrained from attacking and instead tried to take a fatal blow. To test his theory, Haruka places his sword on the ground as a gesture of surrender. However, the black miasma he absorbed begins to reappear around the monster, convincing him that only death can free it from suffering. He prepares to deliver the final strike with his staff, but a feeling stops him. Choosing compassion over violence, he drops his weapon and embraces the skeleton, realizing he has been battling the miasma's control alone. Unexpectedly, his subdue ability activates on the skeleton. Haruka apologizes, unsure how to deactivate the skill, but believes it has freed the creature. Summoning his courage, he offers his hand in friendship. At first, the skeleton doesn't respond, leaving Haruka panicked, thinking it's angry. But the skeleton shakes its head, assuring him it's not an issue. Finally, it accepts the handshake, and Haruka uses his evaluation skill for reassurance, noticing the skeleton's level has reset, perhaps due to the subdue ability. Furthermore, the name changes to Angelica, and discovering it's been a girl all along drives the protagonist mad, as it's yet another instance of him subduing a girl in this absurd isekai. Setting that aside, a citizen advises them to leave quickly. With Angelica's consent, Haruka activates his spatial awareness skill as they exit the boss room, spotting a staircase that might lead them back to the surface. But before they can proceed peacefully, unexpected occurs. A floor boss, the living armor, level 100 appears. Haruka, overwhelmed, clutches his head, knowing he's no match for such a powerful enemy. Desperate for escape, he hatches a plan. Raising his staff, he uses his earth ability to collapse part of the ceiling and prepares to ascend with airwalk. However, through the opening, two level 99 Minotaurs emerge. They leap into the fray in a ridiculous fashion, landing on the living armor and crushing it to pieces. The Minotaurs, in turn, die from the fall damage, turning into literal dead meat. Haruka's investment in luck proves uncanny in this bizarre isekai. The real twist? Angelica shows unexpected interest in the shattered armor lying on the ground. She hurriedly puts on the armor but struggles with its weight. Instead of removing it, she uses magic to adjust it to her true female form. Confused, Haruka examines the armor and identifies it as cursed silver that bonds with the wearer's flesh and bone. Mistaking his observation for a joke about her appearance, she gets angry, storms ahead, and pouts. Amused by her behavior, Haruka considers calling her the armor representative. Together with the group, they continue searching for the missing member, debating whether he has already ascended. Reaching the 50th floor, they encounter a massive four-armed cyclops. Meanwhile, Mariel arrives at the Omu Guild and informs the local master of her uneasy feeling. Though the guards report nothing unusual, some believe the patrols might not be trustworthy. They decide to alert everyone, and the chief wonders about the missing adventurers, but no one has seen them. Worried, Mariel hopes her intuition is wrong. Back in the dungeon, Haruka gives Angelica a storage lid to lift her spirits, but the moment is brief as he senses a level 98 Lich approaching, immune to physical attacks and weak only to holy magic. Weighing his options, Haruka considers escaping through a hole above, but hesitates, fearing what might follow. The Lich wastes no time in attacks, but Haruka narrowly dodges the deadly spell, shaking his head in frustration. This action serves as a crucial reminder. Haruka wields the ultimate weapon against dark magic monsters. He raises his cane, channeling holy magic into the creature. Proud of his once dismissed staff, he realizes it has become his greatest ally. Moving on, Haruka faces level 97 giant moths, knowing their poisonous dust demands caution. Instead of attacking directly, he conjures a flame and lets it hover nearby. Drawn to the light, the moths gather, and Haruka intensifies the magic, burning them all at once. On the 96th floor, Haruka and Angelica encounter venom crawlers, giant caterpillars destined to become moths. These creatures spin a dangerous magical silk, so Haruka traps them by conjuring a thin floor beneath them and rolling it over like a steamroller. Reaching the 95th floor, Haruka senses a powerful presence through swirling purple smoke. Swords lie ominously ahead, and he and Angelica narrowly evade a surprise attack. The foe, a cunning level 100 boss known as the Living Sword, is fast and skilled, using its ability to manipulate surrounding blades to its advantage. There's no avoiding this battle, and Haruka readies himself for the challenge. Frustrated by his boss's underhanded tactics, Haruka wonders who can turn things around. Then he glances beside him and realizes the answer has been there all along: Angelica. Without delay, he asks her for help, and with a single strike, she finishes the fight, leaving Haruka astonished at his newfound ally. Meanwhile, back on the 50th floor, the class struggles against the Cyclops. Exhausted, their journey seems near its end. Nearly out of hope, Kakizaki draws on Haruka's encouragement, recalling his words about being the best athletes. Oda believes Haruka wouldn't give up, inspiring the group to try a new tactic. As the Cyclops attacks, they create an opening for Kakizaki, who uses his explosive speed to aim for the monster's head. Although struck down mid-leap, his role as a decoy sets up Oda to cast a spell that pierces the Cyclops' face, ending the battle. Meanwhile, Haruka reaches the 85th floor and senses a massive swarm of monsters. Outside the dungeon, the guard at the entrance grumbles about how the kids recklessly charge in despite clear warnings of danger. Suddenly, several rats dart past his feet. Alarmed, the guard looks toward the dungeon's depths and notices monsters approaching. Acting quickly, he informs the guild master, who declares that the long-dreaded day has arrived. From the dungeon's deepest levels, a surge of creatures is spilling into the human world. Mariel realizes her fears are coming true, while Gekek worries for the safety of those inside. Deep in thought, the master retrieves an old document explaining that dungeons grow downward floor by floor. When they reach their limit, excess monsters flood out like water from an overflowing cup. Ofter asks how to stop it, and the master reveals that defeating the final boss at the lowest floor will destroy the dungeon and its monsters. Gaytek wonders who could accomplish such a task, while Haruka briefly comes to Mariel's mind, though she quickly dismisses the thought. Suddenly, the ground shakes, threatening collapse. The guildmaster orders Ofter to lead civilians to safety and tells Gaytek to gather fighters at the front gate to defend the territory at all costs. Finally, the master casts a fire spell that surrounds his body, eager to teach the invaders a lesson. Back in the dungeon, Haruka spots griffins flying overhead as he stands with Angelica. Pondering whether these creatures are birds or lions, he chooses to toss a paralyzing fish, dusted with salt, at them. The monsters fight over the small morsel, and once it takes effect, they collapse, clearing the way for Haruka to descend another floor. Meanwhile, on the 54th floor, the class representative urges her team to keep up despite the difficulty. Everyone remains determined to find Haruka, but ahead, they encounter dozens of werewolves. In the city of Onmi, the adventurers have just survived the first wave, but several warriors are already injured. Grief-stricken, Mariel learns the hard way what a stampede is. Faced with the dire situation, Ofter suggests they ask the dungeon outsiders to face the final boss, and the guild leader believes Haruka is up to the task. The issue is they have no way to contact the lone wanderer. Gaytek wonders who would be crazy enough to send a message to him in this chaos, and all three men turn to Mariel. Realizing she's being forced into this unwanted task, she refuses, terrified of venturing into the dungeon alone. The master, recognizing the mission's importance, decides it's too much for a young girl and sends Ofter to accompany her, knowing he is familiar with the dungeon. The subordinate follows orders but recalls that more attacks are coming. Still, the leader reassures that Onmi will be safe, as those remaining will suffice. The subordinate contacts Mariel to begin, and the girl looks around at the injured, trembling, but finds the strength to do what is needed. On the 81st floor, Haruka and Angelica reach a water-filled level. Haruka comments that the lower floors are worse, but the upper ones still present their challenges. Fish then attacks the lone wanderer, but Angelica steps in and slashes them all with her sword. Haruka realizes they are level 81 swordfish, understanding the danger if they all strike at once. He remembers fishmongers freeze their catches, so he uses ice magic to trap them. Afterward, Haruka and Angelica leap across rocks to the other side, while a large shadow swims below, heading toward them. The shadow soon emerges as the floor's boss, a giant fish that creates a wave. Angelica quickly escapes, but Haruka is hit while the lone wanderer sinks. The Dullahan hesitates, unsure how to reach the aquatic foe. Haruka, however, surfaces holding a board made from earth magic. He rides the wave and strikes the giant fish with his cane. After defeating the boss, the duo continues their journey, thrilled by Haruka's achievements in the dungeon. Haruka confesses he's starting to enjoy the place, especially after finding incredible treasures. The Ring of Limitless Fortune on the 79th floor, boosting luck, the Blessed Bracelet on the 77th, enhancing disasters, and the Necromancer's Jewel on the 75th, granting control over the dead. With these relics, he feels he's struck gold, whether by selling them for profit or using them for power. However, with his maximum luck making him immune to curses and diseases, the items aren't as valuable to him. He decides to give them to Angelica, the skeletal armor representative, believing she'll appreciate not being cursed like on the last floor. Though she initially refuses, Haruka's persistence convinces her, and she accepts, touched by his gesture. Haruka, amused by her almost human reaction, lets it slide and moves on. Meanwhile, the dungeon's emperor briefly reveals her true identity, a young, beautiful human, before rejoining the group. Later, on the 54th floor, Haruka's team defeats a pack of werewolves after a tough fight. Though weary, they hear a suspicious noise and prepare for another battle, only to discover it's Mariel and Ofter approaching. Amid the chaos, Haruka and Angelica reach the 74th floor, a searing landscape of molten lava. Mariel revealed she had been sent to find Haruka and begged him to confront the final boss, breaking into tears upon discovering he was missing. The class representative reassured her, confident the lone warrior would handle things, while the group deliberated a faster way to reach him. Traversing the fiery path, Haruka felt the heat pressing on him. Staying alert with his spatial awareness, he avoided traps but nearly fell when he stumbled on a stone. Angelica caught him just in time and suggested a short rest. Sitting down, Haruka struggled to relax, the oppressive heat draining his energy. Just as he was about to lose hope, a faint breeze brushed against him. Simultaneously, the representative sensed the same breeze and heard Haruka's voice in the distance. Joyful, he had discovered a crevice where he used wind magic to cool off. Through a small hole, they established contact. When asked if he could climb through, Haruka explained he couldn't without a rope. However, no one in the group had one, leaving them to think of another solution. He discovered that the girl was on the 54th floor and thought it best to continue running there, as he had been doing. However, Mariel then informed him that Omu City was in danger and the guild was battling a horde of monsters, though their defense might not hold much longer. Ofter stressed that on his way, he had seen a second wave of creatures approaching the city, and even if the adventurers managed to defeat this group, a third would likely devastate Omu. Mariel went on to explain that the only way to stop the stampede was to defeat the dungeon's final boss. Upon hearing this, Haruka glanced at his new companion and told his friends he had already defeated the boss. Oda, however, questioned why another wave of monsters was appearing if that were true. With this in mind, Ofter asked Haruka if he was sure the boss had been defeated, because if the last floor's boss was still alive, the stampede would continue. Confronted with this dilemma, Haruka realized he had to confront the armored figure but felt incapable of doing so. She had been imprisoned and cursed by shadows for so long in the dungeon's depths, enduring unimaginable pain, and it seemed unjust to simply take her life after she had finally experienced freedom in her soul. The lone fighter admitted he hadn't defeated the final boss, leaving his teammates stunned on the top floor. With this revelation, he devised a plan to save both Angelica and the city. Asking her not to worry, he explained he would need her help. He then declared to his companions that he would stop the stampede. Outraged, Ofter argued it was impossible without defeating the final boss, but the class representative trusted her friend's abilities. She urged the others to believe in Haruka, reminding them that despite his flaws, he always managed to save the day. She was confident he wouldn't betray his team because that's just who he was. Moved by her faith, Haruka quietly thanked her, clenching his fists as he vowed to rescue Angelica and protect everyone in Omui. Ascending swiftly to the 73rd floor, Haruka and Angelica encounter a group of lizard men. Haruka, aware of their vulnerability to cold, freezes them effortlessly with his ice magic. Angelica follows up by smashing the frozen enemies to pieces. Moving to the next floor, they come across scorpions, which Haruka deals with by releasing a thick cloud of smoke to suffocate the pests. Soon, they face a fierce, two-headed dog that is both powerful and incredibly fast. Haruka uses a peculiar weapon, bottled foul odors, to overwhelm its sharp sense of smell. Disoriented and unable to focus, the beast becomes an easy target for Angelica, who slices it cleanly in half. After the fight, Haruka organizes the loot collected from their battles, but Angelica urges him to rest. He refuses, saying that with the city's fate depending on them, there's no time to lose. They push on and reach the 69th floor, where a hypnotic bird tries to lull them to sleep with its mesmerizing powers. Haruka believes his general health skill will protect him, but his exhaustion prevents it from activating in time. Overcome by drowsiness, he falls asleep, leaving Angelica to carry him on her back. She assures him to keep resting as she presses forward. Meanwhile, Haruka's classmates are locked in a desperate struggle with a level 100 Sphinx, an opponent far stronger than anything they faced before. Their attacks, both physical and magical, prove futile, as the Sphinx instantly regenerates any damage. The seasoned adventurer, Ofter, informs them that defeating the Sphinx is impossible, as legends claim it is immortal. He reveals that the Sphinx has a fondness for riddles and only spares those who can solve them correctly, adding a layer of strategy to their daunting challenge. He explains that attacking it was a terrible decision, as now the creature is determined to crush the students. Meanwhile, Angelica has carried Haruka to the 50-man floor, where he is finally ready to join the fight again. As he searches for a way to navigate the fragile floor, he suddenly senses a familiar presence above. It turns out to be his classmates, who have been completely overwhelmed by the Sphinx. The massive monster targets the class representative, but just then, Haruka appears and attacks using his newly fused magic gear designed to counter the Sphinx's immunity to physical damage. Although his initial strike causes no harm, it provides Angelica the opportunity to land a decisive blow, severing the Sphinx's head and killing it for good. Afterward, Haruka and the class representative exchange a look, and she welcomes him back, mentioning that everyone has been waiting for his return. His classmates joke about him being late, and the class representative brings up the night they spent together. Just as Haruka begins to explain, the floor beneath him collapses, sending him plummeting into the depths of the dungeon once more. However, he uses Spider-Man-like reflexes to leap onto the falling debris and climb back to safety. He reassures everyone not to worry, boasting about his new skills that help him handle such dangers. Unfortunately, he jinxes himself and the ground beneath him gives way again. This time, Haruka is caught off guard and resigns himself to his fate, but the class representative rushes to grab his hand. Remembering how she failed to save him before, she vows not to let go this time. The top nerd and star athlete arrive to assist her in pulling Haruka up, but there's no time to catch their breath as the third wave of the stampede is already wreaking havoc on the floor below. Chaos breaks out, and the class rep urgently asks Haruka if he has a strategy to save the city. He assures her he does, revealing that Angelica is the key. The class rep, curious, asks for more details, but Mariel interrupts in a panic, insisting they return to the city immediately. Haruka agrees, and they decide to use the warp gate to reach the surface directly. Haruka is stunned, having noticed no such device on his way up. Ofter explains that the gate isn't visible when climbing the dungeon, as the mechanism only activates in reverse. Soon, Haruka and the group reach the city gate, where the guild master and others stand ready, bracing for the third wave of the monster onslaught. The wave arrives far larger than the earlier ones, as monsters swarm the plains and griffins dominate the skies. The adventurers are overwhelmed, realizing the previous waves were mere preludes to this overwhelming force. Just as despair takes hold, Haruka signals Angelica. She steps forward, unsheaths her sword, and drives it into the ground, unleashing a massive surge of energy that spreads across the entire city and dungeon. Haruka concludes that, as the true dungeon boss, Angelica not only dominates the monsters but likely has full control over them, given how effortlessly she destroyed them on their journey to the top. He is certain that her abilities can eliminate all the monsters in one go, and his hunch is confirmed when Angelica's immense magical field erases every creature from existence in mere seconds. Everyone is left speechless at the sight, and Haruka walks over to Angelica for a fist bump. He exhales in relief, remarking that his plan worked perfectly. His classmates, however, are more bewildered than ever and question whether this was his doing. Haruka clarifies that it wasn't him but Angelica who performed this astonishing feat. Embarrassed, she begins acting shy. The sharpest student among them, the head nerd, is the only one perceptive enough to realize that Angelica is actually the Dungeon Emperor. The revelation causes the group to panic, but Haruka quickly reassures them that there's no reason to worry. He explains that Angelica is firmly on their side and has saved his life countless times while navigating the dungeon. The adventurers trust Haruka and accept that Angelica poses no threat, though the head nerd remains skeptical. He probes further, asking if Angelica the Quiet Knight is truly the dungeon's ultimate ruler with powers exceeding even the strongest bosses. Haruka confirms this, explaining that while her level was reset due to certain events, she still surpasses most monsters in strength. He shares how he initially thought her power alone would force the monsters into submission, but realized they had to get up close to make it work. The other girls nervously ask what happened to the monsters, fearing they might retaliate. Haruka reassures them that the creatures are likely resting peacefully on their respective floors, following the direct command of the Dungeon Emperor. He proclaims that the city is finally secure, and the news instantly brightens everyone's spirits. Cheers erupt as the crowd celebrates the momentous occasion, and tranquility swiftly returns to the city. The following day, Haruka decides to organize a special event to showcase all the treasures he collected from the dungeon. As requested, the class representative arrives with the others, and they are utterly astonished by the impressive display of rare weapons and armor that Haruka has carefully arranged. With a confident grin, he announces that everything is part of a limited-time Black Friday sale. Chaos ensues as the mention of a sale inspires the girls to summon superhuman strength, effortlessly pushing the boys aside to grab the best deals. Fortunately, Haruka, always thinking ahead, had set aside a few items for emergencies. Showing his loyalty as a true friend, he shares these reserves with the boys, ensuring everyone gets something. Soon, the group is engrossed in exploring their new gear, and Haruka feels a sense of satisfaction knowing their lives will be much easier now. However, a nagging concern lingers in his mind: Angelica. After spending so much time in the dungeon, he worries that her social skills might be non-existent. Haruka wonders if she will be able to adapt and connect with the rest of the group now that she's joining their daily lives. After negotiating rare items, Haruka laid them on the table, and the kid made some serious cash, grinning widely with pride. The class representative approached to thank him and Angelica for their efforts. Speaking of Angelica, Haruka introduced her to the group, calling her a dependable skeleton once known as the Dungeon Emperor. Though the representative already knew of her, she assumed Haruka had used a pheromone ring to ally with Angelica. However, Haruka explained he had relied on his subjugation ability, leaving his friend amazed that he had tamed the labyrinth's strongest creature. Curious, as the representative pulled Angelica aside for details, while Haruka hoped Angelica could connect with everyone and enjoy a new start. Soon, Angelica faced the girls in class, who bombarded her with questions. Shimazaki asked if Emperor Angelica meant she was male. Silent as ever, Angelica shook her head and confirmed she was female. Asked her age, she held up 17 fingers, the same as the other girls, sparking excitement about getting to know her. Though a bit tense, Angelica took the representative's hand, encouraged to share her story little by little. The leader had learned that Angelica had been trapped in the depths of the labyrinth's darkest level until Haruka saved her. She had been left to die, but her curse was broken through subjugation. The leader believed it was time to welcome Angelica warmly and ensure she received the best care. To start, they helped her bathe, though removing her heavy armor proved challenging. With the new friend's assistance, the armor was peeled away, revealing that her leg was fully intact, not just bones, shocking her and her classmates. The surprise deepened when all her armor was removed. Meanwhile, Haruka rested after another exhausting day. Despite his satisfaction, he was frustrated about leaving the labyrinth without the pheromone ring, the very item he sought. However, he didn't come back empty-handed. Along with various treasures, he leveled up 6 times, strengthened several skills, and discovered a potentially useful teleportation ability, though he couldn't activate it yet. Reflecting on the ordeal, Haruka acknowledged he couldn't have handled the stampede without Angelica and his classmates. Determined to grow stronger, he planned return to the forest soon. On his 33rd day in this world, he stormed into the hostel early, searching for the class leader, who was still reeling from the previous day's revelations. When Angelica's armor was removed, it was clear Haruka still didn't know the truth, and she wasn't sure how to tell him. Meanwhile, Haruka sheepishly asked if he could return to the forest to do his thing. She agreed as long as he promised to come back, knowing there wouldn't be any stampedes for a while. Excited about his freedom, Haruka noticed Angelica sitting nearby. He imagined she was getting along in the city, but felt it wasn't right to leave her alone, so he invited the Dungeon Emperor to join him. When Angelica accepted, their leader's jaw dropped, worried Haruka might uncover Angelica's secret. She tried to intervene, but quickly dismissed her concerns and let them go. Back in the forest, Haruka enjoyed the fresh air and practiced teleportation. Though pleased with the technique, he lacked control and fell off a cliff, saving himself by stepping on air. Angelica, distracted by mushrooms, also slipped and fell but was caught by Haruka, who jokingly thought she was too heavy for a skeleton. That evening back home, Haruka enjoyed a bath and teasingly invited Angelica to join him, but immediately clarified he was joking. In the bathroom, towel in hand, the girl removed her armor, wrapped herself in the towel, and revealed her true identity. Haruka, startled by the interruption, momentarily lost his composure, but as confusion gave way to recognition, he realized she was the same girl he had saved from the dungeon. After their bath, Haruka knew they needed to talk. However, the girl was so shy that her silence made him uneasy. Using gestures, she shared her story. Once a lifeless spirit trapped in the dungeon, her curse had been lifted when her silver armor restored her body. With the help of the blessed bracelet, the necromancy gem, and the ring of fortune, Angelica regained her lost life force. Haruka had unknowingly brought her back to life, and she decided to stay with him in gratitude. When Haruka asked why she didn't pursue her freedom now that she was free, Angelica burst into tears, shook her head, and hugged him tightly. Haruka realized that after so much loneliness, she simply needed to stay close to someone. To cheer up his guest, the homeowner shares a funny story until she drifts off, a tale of a solitary wanderer who understands the loneliness of the world. The next morning on day 43, Haruka challenges his new friend to a quick, friendly duel to test the skills he gained in the dungeon but hasn't yet used. Smiling, the girl accepts and they face off. Haruka notices that his opponent, Angelica, seems faster and stronger after escaping the dungeon's darkness. Determined, he plans to outmatch her speed with his new shifting ability. As the duel begins, Angelica charges forward with her sword, forcing Haruka to use his reflexes to dodge her swift strikes. Despite his success, he knows his level is still low and his chosen skills are far from ideal. Nonetheless, the lone wanderer vows to grow stronger. He counters with his staff, but Angelica blocks and ends the fight with a hit to his head. Haruka, undeterred, feels proud to have tested his shifting ability and promises to surpass Angelica one day. But first, he catches some fish using his electric skill to prepare a hearty lunch. Haruka teaches his friend how to use a knife to cut fish, and the two grow closer while preparing a fish and mushroom dish that surpasses the chef's expectations. After eating, Haruka notices Angelica looking uneasy and flushed. Concerned, he asks what's wrong, but instead of replying, she surprises him by grabbing his arm and leading him to bed. She asks him to sit, moves behind him, and nervously offers to give him a massage as thanks for the meal. Despite accepting, Haruka quickly regrets it as her unique technique misses all the right spots. Not wanting to upset her, he endures it and pretends to feel better. Pleased, Angelica asks how else she can repay him, so Haruka takes her outside. Under a starry sky, the pair sit on a bench admiring the scenery. Sensing Angelica's distance, Haruka invites her closer, realizing that her life has likely been shaped by conflict. Determined to show her something beyond war, he gently strokes her head and thanks her. Instead of relaxing, Angelica grows more timid, trembling and turning away. Haruka touches her shoulder and reassures her, understanding that she's trying her best to adjust and promises to help her however he can. On day 44, Haruka invites Angelica to return to the city with him the next day and she agrees. Afterward, they continue stargazing. On their way to Omiyu, rain begins to fall, prompting them to quicken their pace to reach the city walls. Once inside and out of the rain, their friends warmly welcome them back, teasingly noticing the pair holding hands. The group chats happily with Angelica, celebrating her return until the representative arrives, playfully scolding Haruka with a jujitsu move for spending the night alone with her. The boys gather around Haruka, eager for details. Amid this cheerful scene, Angelica quietly returns to her companions. Haruka suggests she mingle more with the group before turning away, but Angelica stops him with a soft request. Struggling with her words, she thanks him deeply before returning to her friends. Left alone, Haruka reflects on a lesson from this world. Everyone carries their own worries, struggles, and loneliness. Yet no one is truly alone, which is why Haruka, known as the Lone Wanderer, will continue to explore this world, knowing he'll always have connections along the way. This is the end of the series. If you like this video, please hit that like and subscribe button and turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any new videos. All of your support helps me to keep bringing more high-quality recaps. Check out this other video too if you haven't.